What's happening? It is Friday, May 26th. We are safe and sound back home from the tour with Midnight. I have completed my cathartic ritual of cleaning the van and trailer, which I always do. It's good. It feels nice. There's about 7,000 miles worth of road dust on those vehicles. And yeah, it's cool. It's just a good little ritual. Allows me to reflect back on the experience. Before I get into the tour recap and all that, got some fan questions piling up here, so I'm going to address some of that. Got an email from our friend Danny, aka Easy Bake Coven, who we met, I believe, in Kentucky. He attached some really cool pictures too. I could throw those up, I guess. Hello there, Nate. As of the time I'm writing this email, the podcast has gone 15 episodes strong. I first want to express my admiration not only for your works, but for the stories and perspectives you've offered through the series. Listening to Spirit Adrift with some of the context you've given in mind, such as with Spectral Savior, has given me a deeper appreciation for your craft and the group efforts that make it happen. Near the beginning of that first Curse of Conception episode, you mentioned how the measure of creativity and or uniqueness is determined by how broad an artist's array of influences is. With this in mind, do you think there is such a thing as wearing too many influences, or do you believe that the melting pot is boundless? What acts come to mind when thinking of a defining example of your stance? Well, I always go back to Lombardo, what I heard him say at the drum clinic, which is similar to this video that I've been seeing of Geddy Lee going around. And the basic gist of it is your style emerges once you have taken in so many diverse influences and melded them that eventually those influences just sort of go away and your personality steps up to the front. But the idea is that no artist is creating in a vacuum, and anybody that acts like they are is just full of shit. So yeah, I don't think there's ever such a thing as too many influences, to the point that, like, once you're deep into being a creative type, or at least this has been my experience, it's not even music and film and art and paintings and that sort of stuff that influences you. It's literally every second of life. It's dreams. It's a silent encounter with something in nature. Your life becomes your art and vice versa. So there, to me, there's definitely not such a thing as having too many influences. What acts come to mind when thinking of a defining example of your stance? Yeah, any good band or any good artist, you are inspired to pick up an instrument or a paintbrush or whatever by stuff that speaks to you, and then that stuff becomes you, and then you eventually become something that hopefully leads someone else to pick up a guitar or a paintbrush or a film camera or whatever. Yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Any good man. He also Danny tells a little story here about meeting us in Louisville. And yeah, I'll keep this for myself. Really nice stuff. We remember meeting you, Danny. It gives me a lot of hope to see a young dude such as yourself that's so passionate and committed to music. So thank you, man. Guys like you keep us going, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate you, man, and how much hope it gives us. So thanks, Danny. Okay, I got a I Shall Return fan theory. Still, no one has gotten the I Shall Return inside joke. But this is from our friends Johnny and Allison. Some more diehards, man. Really passionate music lovers. You're driving in your van back to Texas, taking the freeway instead of the path of peril. Sorry, but you are wrong. Yeah, thanks for the kind words, though. about the song. Really appreciate it. Love you guys. Hope to see you soon. Here's one from Jason down the road, man. What's up, Jason? Gonna see you Sunday at your wife's coffee shop. I'm gonna say, this is what Jason says. I'm gonna say the opening lyrics are very Robert Plant, and you're referencing Lord of the Rings. Onward, you're walking to Mount Doom, following the great eagles, and you're carrying the one ring that was forged in flame. You're not the first person to say that, and I love that theory. And honestly, I'm not well versed on Lord of the Rings at all, so it's not that. But I think that that's really cool. That fits. That theory totally makes sense and fits. Which just goes to show you that artists can have one thing in mind when they're writing something. Someone else hears it and it means something totally different to them. That happens all the time. But no, it's not Lord of the Rings. It's way more like Beavis and Butthead or Bill and Ted. It's not deep at all. Yeah. Okay, Big Daddy Dario from San Antonio wants to talk about owls and stuff. He noticed the owl pictures behind me when he saw the first podcast. The owl right here, owl. Something going on with this. I'd love to hear your take on the owls, whether it's Western culture, Eastern culture, wisdom, black magic, alien abduction, Moloch, or all the above. It's a cool topic. Either way, just want to say thanks for the great music. Yeah, thanks, man. It was nice meeting you and your buddy in San Antonio. That was a cool show. The owl thing, I didn't even know that the cover of Ghost of the Gallows was going to be an owl. I had some talks with Jeremy Hush, who did all the artwork, and I just sent him ideas and different stuff. You know, I felt like moving back to the South and moving back into a more rural environment really was at the crux of the creative process for the new album. So I just sent Hush a bunch of concepts around that, different wildlife that we encounter out here and different themes and stuff like that. And he came back with the owl. That's not really what I was envisioning for the front cover. But I liked it so much, we just ran with that. As far as, I'm no expert on owls, dude, honestly. Even like the biological aspect of them or the symbolic aspect of them or whatever. But I will tell you a story. The owl thing with this album, I always have really strange things happen when I reach a milestone when I'm writing songs or working on albums or whatever. There's all kinds of different milestones, you know, figuring out a song that has perplexed you and that has become kind of a riddle, or, you know, finishing a song and realizing, oh, these are the songs that are going to be on the album. I have them all now. Different milestones like that. But there was one when I was working on Ghost at the Gallows, I had a real monumental milestone with the album, and I went outside and had just a face-to-face encounter with this owl in the tree out back, and we just stared at each other, and I just wanted to see how long this thing would stare at me. And it was a long time. I think I stared at this owl and it stared at me for like 45 minutes or something like that. And it was really intense, and then it flew away. It was on a big burned up dead oak tree back there. And then for whatever reason, I've made some walking paths back here on our land, but for whatever reason, I just took off walking through like a bunch of brush and not on a path, not on a trail. It really wasn't even walkable. And it was really weird. I don't know why. I was like, it was a very uncomfortable and difficult walk. And I was just like, you know, clawing through all this overgrowth and brush and stuff. And I walked to this dry creek bed and I found this deer skull back there. There was a fire out here years and years ago, so there's all kinds of cool stuff. I found this skull and one of these bones. And later when I was working on the trails, I found like a whole skeleton almost. But yeah, I had the owl encounter and the deer skull thing happen right when I reached this big milestone for the record. With this sort of like mystical, unexplainable stuff, my stance has sort of become, I'm not interested in figuring out what it means. I know that there's something to it, because this sort of stuff is just, at this point, if I ignored it, it would just make me ignorant and contrarian almost. You know, I'm a skeptic when it comes to everything. But when you observe a repeatable pattern that happens over and over and over and over, at a certain point, you have to acknowledge it. So I don't know. I think there's definitely like a mystical, spiritual element to music. I think it's a way for human beings to tap into something beyond the material world. As far as how owls factor into that, I don't really know. You mentioned alien abductions. I haven't been abducted by aliens, but I did see a UFO when I was like 17 or 18 with my friend Ryan, who we always stay with when we're in New Jersey. Hopefully we can get him on at some point and we can talk about our UFO experience, because it still haunts us to this day, 17, 18 years later. But yeah, that's the owl thing, man. Working on the album, had a big moment creatively, walked out back and had a really intense connection with an owl in the backyard, and then found this skull. And Jeremy Hush just came up with some really cool stuff for the album art. I mean, there's a lot of artwork that comes with the physical release of the album. Can't wait for people to see it. So that's it for fan questions. I'll do a little recap of the Midnight tour. So yeah, I think we did 6,000 or 7,000 miles, maybe 8,000, somewhere around there, if you count the drive back. Me and Mikey drove from Pittsburgh back to Austin at the end. So now we've done Pittsburgh to Austin, Worcester to Austin, Grand Rapids to Austin. It would be nice if a tour would start and or end within 1,000 miles of where we live, but it is what it is, So the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Midnight tour. I'm definitely doing a hard reassessment of things when we get back from Europe. We're going to UK and Europe in a couple weeks. I think we just added another UK show in Newcastle on June 15th, I believe. So yeah, we're doing Download with Metallica, which is super cool. Never would have thought. And then the next day we're doing Into the Grave in the Netherlands. I think we're playing Antwerp, Belgium after that, and then 2 shows in the UK with Gwar, and then 1 headlining show in the UK, and then Hellfest with Iron Maiden. Never would have thought. But when we get back from that, I'm going to have to do a reassessment, man. It's I'm glad we did the Midnight tour. I love that band. I have loved that band since the first album. And again, we keep lucking out and we're touring with these bands that we love, and then we meet them and we love them even more. We knew the guys a little bit because we had played with them in the Netherlands. Ryan, the drummer, had actually come to Electrical Audio when we were in Chicago tracking drums for the new album and hung out for a minute. One of the nicest dudes in the world. Great drummer, great guy. And he mentioned when he was in Chicago with us last year, some of their touring plans and stuff. So that's how the seed got planted. I love the guys at Midnight so much, man. Like I said, we've just been so fortunate, touring with Yob, some of the best dudes in the world. One of my favorite bands, Crowbar, same thing. Loved them even more after we toured with them. COC, same thing. Now you can add Midnight to the list. Just great dudes. Jamie from Midnight and I had a lot of really good conversations just kindred spirits, man. It's spooky how much we have in common, personality wise and demeanor wise. And, you know, we've formed our projects for similar reasons and in a similar way. Midnight started off as a solo project, basically. So did Spirit Adrift. And so I picked his brain on that a lot. You know, he started Midnight partially out of frustrations and just not having the patience for the bullshit anymore, man. Whether it's behind the scenes stuff with the so-called music industry or whatever, or not getting to do stuff because not everybody's on the same page, or just feeling like you're working really, really hard and you're not getting that in return from whoever it may be, agents, managers, whatever. So yeah, 20 years ago, he said, screw it, and started doing Midnight, and solely with the intention of making music that he wanted to hear that he wasn't hearing at the time. And it's literally the exact same story with Spirit Adrift. So I felt really fortunate, and it was a real blessing for me to be able to hang out with a dude like that who's been doing that for so long, and talk to him about the whys and hows and what worked and what doesn't work, and how much control you want to exert over it and how much control you want to give to other people and that sort of thing. But I'm finding myself getting dangerously close. This is going to be some Dear Diary shit. I'm going to try to make it as non-Dear Diary as possible. But if you're not interested in a grown man talking about his feelings, then go ahead and skip it. But I feel like I'm getting dangerously close to the fuck it position that I was in when I started Spirit Adrift. You know, resentment is something that's very dangerous for me. Frustration is something that's very dangerous for me. It could fucking ruin my whole life. It has in the past, you know. And I just find myself getting, I have less and less of like a buffer zone from going to feeling okay to wanting to like burn this whole shit down. So that is one kind of like personal crisis I'm sort of dealing with. And there were a couple other sort of personal crises going on throughout the tour. And a couple of them, I've got a pretty good idea of what I need to do. So it's no big deal. It's no, you know, I don't know if I'm like experiencing some kind of midlife crisis or if it's like just a natural sane reaction to trying to tour in a post-COVID world. You know, I glanced at YouTube earlier today. There's this guy, Dean Lamb, who has a podcast. I think he plays in that band Archspire. And I didn't watch the episode, but I just saw like the first little preview. And he was talking about, I think their tour was 23 days or 30 days or something. And he said that the band had to run up $150,000 of debt before they played a single note on that tour. Things are fucked up right now, man. I'm sure you're all aware of it, but it's never been more difficult to tour, to make a tour happen. So that's definitely a big factor in it. So these were things that I was kind of grappling with during the tour. The tour was great. Again, I'm glad we did it. But there's going to be a hard reassessment. And one thing that I've always done in the past when I'm struggling to figure out a way forward or trying to make a decision or something like that, you know, used to, I would just burn everything down and walk away, say, fuck it. But I think I'm growing up. So I wrote a list. I wrote a list of bands that I want to tour with and I'm willing to tour with. And I'm not going to go on tour unless it's one of those bands. I don't need to. I used to, you know, the motivation for touring used to be getting away from my life because I was not happy with any aspect of my life at home. And that's not the case now. That's not the case. Before I was like trying to run from everything, trying to run from myself, trying to like distract myself from my problems and all the ways that I could and should be better. And now I just don't need to do that. So it's like, what's the motivation? For me, when you first start playing music, or for me, it was like attention from girls, especially. That was that was a big motivator. Guess what? That's not going to keep you motivated for very long. So then what, it's obviously not going to be money. If you're getting into music to make money, I can't tell you how much of a fucking moron you are and what a lack of character you have. Don't do it. If you think that playing in a band, you're going to make money and stuff, just don't do it. Do something else. Like if there was a list of jobs that you should do for money, I think being in a rock band would probably be near the end of that list. So that's out. So what's the motivation? And I'll tell you what it is. By far the best part of this tour and every other tour is the fans, you guys. I was doing merch on this tour, and some of the stuff you guys were saying to me, I can't even believe it. I can't believe it, man. That's the dream come true stuff, not the money, not the attention or anything like that. It's like people telling me that the music helped them. And I'm not going to like repeat any of what y'all were saying, because some of it was personal, and it also just seemed like stroking of the ego if I got into all that. But I just have to say, like, all you guys that came up and said something to me, that is the motivation. You guys, that's it. Like the human connection. And it's, it's not cool to be earnest these days. And guess what? I don't give a fuck. Like I earnestly love music, and specifically metal, and it saved my life many, many times. It has given me a purpose. I really believe that it's my purpose in life to connect with other people like me through music. And so for me to be able to pass forward what music did for me, I mean, that's the motivation, 100%. It's hard to tour right now. Anybody that says anything else is lying, man. I just got off the phone with a friend of mine, my neighbor Curse, who, he's about to go out on this tour that was supposed to happen 2 years ago, and then it was supposed to happen 1 year ago, then it was supposed to happen 6 months ago, and now it's happening, and everything's last minute, and it's easy. I think it's like a natural human inclination to want to look for somebody to blame, Maybe there's not anybody to blame. I know that everything seems to be in shambles behind the scenes, and everything is being done last minute. And there's a major issue. If you're announcing a tour a month before the tour happens, it's going to affect the tour. And the person who was fucking around, not doing their job, sitting around with their dick in their hand, waiting till a month left to announce the tour, they're not going to suffer really because of that. It's the bands that are going to suffer, So moving forward, I'm setting boundaries, man. I have my list of bands to tour with. Starting at the bottom, it's like very realistic, but it goes up to what would not be very realistic. And, people lately have been telling me I have like unrealistic goals and shit. I don't care. When I started the band, playing Download with Metallica was an unrealistic goal. So fuck you. If you're not down for unrealistic goals, then you're in the wrong business, dude. So there's one thing, my little list. If you fans have bands in mind that you would love to see us tour with, go ahead and email me. And maybe I'll add it to the list. Another boundary I'm going to establish moving forward is that I don't do a tour unless it's announced 3 months in advance. I'll pick 3 months. Because a lot of stuff we've been doing lately, it just, it's like the promoters are barely aware of it. When we show up at the gig, they're like, the promoter rep is like, I just heard about this like 2 days ago, you know? So I'm not going to do that anymore. That's it, man. I don't know. Who knows if it's a good idea to talk about this publicly, but that's it. Like, there's no reason, dude. Things are fucked up right now. A bag of beef jerky in the gas station, I saw like a normal size of beef jerky, $18.50. We'd have to sell like 3, and now obviously we're not going to buy beef jerky, but like if we did want to buy a bag of beef jerky, you'd have to sell like 3 or 4 t-shirts just to afford that. The roads are crumbling. Every city we drove through coming back home, they had either shut down the interstate or shut it down to 1 lane. It seems like the trucking industry's standards have gotten lower than ever. I don't know who the fuck these guys are that are getting hired to drive trucks, but you used to never see truck drivers like looking down at their cell phone because they understood they're driving something that could kill 100 people, you know? But that's not the case anymore, man. Every time we passed a truck, we had to wonder if they were going to swerve into our lane. You know, happened a bunch. Tom sent us some article about a chain link thing flying off of a truck and hitting some dude in the jugular. Some touring band, it like bust through the window and hit the guy in the jugular while he's driving. I don't need that shit, man. I don't need that. You know, especially after going overseas and playing with Metallica and Maiden, it's gonna take something worth it to get me to leave my house. That might sound shitty. I love the fans. I love you guys, but I want you guys to get good shows too. I want you guys to get your money's worth and have a really memorable experience and have a good time and see really good bands. I don't want to half-ass it. I don't like half-assing things. And unfortunately, in this business, you have to depend on other people whose half-assing policy probably isn't as strict as mine. So that's it, man. We're only going to tour with really badass bands. And really, in a way, nothing's changing because we've only been touring with really badass bands. I just got real specific with it. I let everybody know, like, what we're shooting for. These are the goals, and that's it. And, yeah, things are going to straighten out at some point. So I meant to do the good, the bad, and the ugly of the tour. And I got to rambling. The good, number one, you guys, the fans, period. That's it. We love you, man. Like I said, if I ever start getting that old familiar feeling of what the fuck am I doing, it takes one of you guys coming up and saying something nice to me and it's gone. It erases it. And that I can't even put a value on that. So thank you guys so much for coming out, supporting us. More good. The band's playing better than ever. I'm really, really proud of how we're playing. I'm really proud of the other dudes and the work that everybody's put in. You know, there was a part of me that wondered, man, are we really ready to play something like Download or something? And yes, 100%. We've put in the work. Yeah, I'm really psyched with how tight the band sounds. Heavy. It's good. Playing good. More good about the Midnight Tour. Seeing friends, man. Saw my friend Jeremy. I know you're listening, bud. The most Arkansas dude to ever live. One of the most like grown-ass, badass men that I've ever met. Don't get to see him very often. He came and we didn't even hang out at a show, which is actually better not hanging out at a show. He came and hung in our hotel room outside of Little Rock. Love you, man. Good to see you. Seeing my friend Tim in Tulsa, always killer. Seeing my friend Evan in Tampa. the people, man. That's the motivation. The people, the fans, the people, the human connection, the love, man, the excitement, the passion for metal and good music, all of that, man. I love it. More good from the tour. The Midnight Dudes, their crew, Wiki, Rodney, who is in Devastation. Yo, if we won Rodney over, I'm happy. That's it. That guy is the OG of OGs, man. He was there for it all. He was there with Metallica in 86. He was there with Slayer in 86. Toured with Death in 1990. He was telling me stories about like Chuck from Death getting on the payphone with the label and they told him, yo, Spiritual Healing's the first death metal album ever to break into the Billboard Top 200. That's what I'm talking about, man. If we can win over a dude like Rodney, he told me on the last day, yo, you got a fan for life. That's it, man. I'm happy. I'm happy. All this other shit doesn't matter. More good. Yeah, I don't know. I love the Midnight Dudes so much. Me and Ryan bonded over being gritty redneck motherfuckers, you know, going through tough times and making the best out of it, you know, working hard and trying to be positive every second of every day, you know. Me and V-Man bonded over the horror movie stuff for sure. And I think a mutual disgust of people not doing their damn jobs. And me and Jamie bonded over the unique position that we're in, man. What a guy. What a group of guys. New best friends. Gonna try and go see him with Danzig in San Antonio. What else? More good? I'm sure there's more good to be had. Man, Chicago, I'll give the highlights. Chicago, killer. Promoter there, Shane, great guy. I've never had a bad show in Chicago. Love it so much. Tampa, first time in Tampa. That's my home turf. I was born in that area. Did not disappoint. Like I said, got to see my boy Evan, talk about riding lawnmowers. Got to meet his wife. Very nice gal. Greenville, South Carolina. Rowdy, man. And my friends Dan and Linda came out. Shout out to Dan and Linda. I know they're listening. And we had a great time, man. She made us cookies. Thought about putting weed in them and didn't. Appreciate that. What else? Yeah, I'm sure there's more good, but that's all I can think of right now. The bad, yeah. Announcing a tour a month before the tour happens, not the best idea. Gonna avoid that moving forward. The ugly, definitely just like the state of society, man, the state of the country. If I didn't know any better, I would think that somebody was intentionally trying to destroy the working class in this country. Which I think the more likely scenario is that the people in charge are so inept and out of touch with what it means to be a real person, that they're just failing. But it's affecting all of us. You know what I mean? Again, it's like somebody sitting at a desk making decisions hardly based in reality and probably just based on trying to get reelected or get a job as a pundit on one of these propaganda networks. And meanwhile, you and me are paying the price, you know, $18.50 for a bag of beef jerky. Can't drive more than an hour without running into some like third world country type of rubble on the road or a highway being shut down or whatever. So it's ugly out there, man. It's, but that's why we go to shows and that's why we play shows. Is it hard touring? Kinda. Is it as hard as working in the dish pit at Bordino's in Fayetteville, Arkansas? No. Is it as hard as caring for somebody with a developmental disability? No. Did that for years. It's the easiest job I've ever had. As hard as it can be emotionally and, you know, as unclear as the path forward can be at times, it's the easiest and best job I ever had, period. And I'm not going to forget that. Am I going to tighten the ship up moving forward and make sure that we're not wasting our time and wasting your time? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I've never been one to tour just to tour. It's got to be cool. And again, the Midnight tour was cool. Shout out to Spider too. Those guys were a lot of fun. They reminded me of younger, crazier version of myself. It's nice to have that kind of chaos around. So that was cool. Yeah, man, that's it. We'll see. I'm excited to go play in the UK and Europe and come back and reassess. And you know, it's funny. I made this list, showed it to the powers that be and the band and everything. And as we're driving home, I get an email that says, oh, there's this offer in September. And it wasn't a band that was on my list, but, you know, it's a band that would be like literally perfect for us to be touring in support of the new record. So that's how they get you. I'm like, man, I'm putting a damn stop to this nonsense. And then you get an email and it's like, well, or not, whatever. And then next thing you know, 10 years have gone by. All right, I'm going to talk about St. Vitus, Die Healing. Saw that Mark Adams passed away. Rest in peace, man. I know he was struggling. Hope he's at peace now, wherever he is out in the cosmos of riffs. This is a real doom album, man. I love St. Vitus. I've been on a real St. Vitus kick lately. I discovered him in high school, and the record I listened to the most, honestly, was the live one with Wino. I have that. I have a Southern Lords release of that. But I want to talk about Die Healing today because I feel like it's sort of overlooked in their catalog. And one thing I love about St. Vitus is they're sort of learning on the job. Like, they're punks and they learned their instruments just well enough to do exactly what they needed to do to fulfill their sonic vision, you know? Dave Chandler's solos are just chaos, man. They're just chaos. I really like Armando as a drummer. He's not, I mean this with all due respect. He's not like what you would consider conventionally a great drummer. I'm saying that in parentheses. Nor are any of them like great. I would say Scott Regers is a great singer, but very unconventional. But nobody in the band is like some technical wizard. And they just deliver exactly what they need to deliver. Doom and gloom personified through sound. And I think Die Healing's their best album, honestly. The production, best production they've ever had. The lyrics are really good. The vocal performance is as unhinged as any vocal performance I've ever heard. I feel like it took me a while to realize that Scott Regers he had to be a huge influence on old boy from Burning Witch. You know, he goes from this like escaped mental patient type of wail to this vibratoed out, like operatic, clean vocal, you know, and it's just really bombastic and dynamic, and it fits the music and the themes really well. Yeah, Die Healing's a great record. I really like that. For me, when it comes to doom, it's, you know, Black Sabbath invented it. But the first bands that sort of self-identified as doom be like Pentagram, Trouble, St. Vitus. To me, those are the big three. And I talk about Trouble a lot, and I don't talk about Pentagram because I don't really want to give Count Cracula any props. I don't really like complimenting dudes that beat up their elderly mamas, so probably won't ever talk about that band. But I will talk about St. Vitus. Love this record. Love the band. I was fortunate enough to see them both with Wino and Scott Regers. Love both versions of the band. And a quote from... Oh, I also met Dave Chandler in New Orleans when I was down there hanging out with Jimmy Bauer. And I hope Jimmy doesn't mind me sharing this, but this is one of my favorite memories ever. We're sitting at the bar. Dave Chandler walks in and Jimmy's like, yo, this is Dave Chandler from St. Vitus. I'm like, oh shit. He's like, you want to meet him? I'm like, yeah. So he brings him over, talk to him for a minute. Super nice guy. He walks off and Jimmy's like, man, isn't that a trip? That's Dave Chandler. And I said, man, you're Jimmy Bauer. And he goes, nah, but that's Dave Chandler. That's how humble Jimmy is, man. Jimmy acts a fool, but he's a humble guy. But yeah, I love St. Vitus, man. That's it. Check out that record, Die Healing. Really, really good if you like real ass doom metal. Okay, I hope this all made sense. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention, this quote that always stuck with me. One of the earliest quotes I remember sticking with me about this whole deal was Iommi saying, before you ever pick up a guitar, hire a lawyer. Just talking about getting screwed in the music business. That always kind of stuck with me. The point of that just being like, make sure you educate yourself on all aspects of this. But another one that stuck with me was Dave Chandler from St. Vitus was being interviewed. Because apparently I didn't tour all that much back in the day. And they had a real renaissance like around 2011, somewhere around there. And I remember at the time somebody asked him, you know, what's the secret of like success and getting people to care about your band? And he said, break up and get back together 10 years later. And that always stuck with me, man. I'm like, all right, no matter how bleak things are looking, I always got the nuclear option in the back pocket, man. Just break up and then get back together 10 years later. And St. Vitus was on a tour bus in 2011. What a trip, man. Worked for them. Hopefully we don't have to resort to that. All right. Send questions, comments, hate mail to bigriffenergy@gmail.com. I'll try to get another one of these episodes in before we go play Download and Hellfest and all that. Thanks, guys. Love you.